Hi, my name is Ritesh Bawri. I'm an entrepreneur and also the father of two wonderful children. Interestingly, I'm also someone who's almost died 14 times in my life. From being in a near plane crash to being lost in a jungle, I've seen it all. 7 years ago, I experienced what was hopefully my last near death experience. I just turned 40. I was diabetic, I was hypertensive, had always suffered from asthma, and I had acidity for at least 20 years. Thanks to the intervention of Professor Ravi Rajan, I was able to reverse all these conditions in 90 days. I was hooked. I had to learn more. Since then, I've read thousands of medical journals and hundreds of books. I've certified myself in physiology from the Harvard Medical School and in nutrition from the Tufts Medical School. I just had to understand what was happening in the human body. I've started Breathe Again, a platform dedicated to helping people live a very long and a very healthy life. We've been able to impact thousands of people, reverse lifestyle conditions. You know, the really interesting thing is that even the World Health Organization calls lifestyle diseases potentially reversible. Are we saying that if you just simply made some lifestyle changes, 7 of the top 10 reasons why we're dying could be reversed, or at least the risk could be reduced? To find out more, I put together the Ritesh Bawri Show, where we talk to experts and regular people, understand from them what's going on with their lives, and how all of us can live a very long and a very healthy life. Welcome to the show, the Ritesh Bawri Show.
Hi Ritesh, welcome to your show. We're doing a role reversal today. So how does it feel to be on the other side of the interview?
No, so I think this is going to be a lot of fun. As you know, and we've had many conversations in the past, health and wellness is something that's just become a very, very, very integral part of my life. So conversation with an intelligent person, someone who's, well read, well educated, and obviously has read my book as well. I think I'm going to have a lot of fun. Thank you.
Indeed. And just to give the audience a precursor into how we met, it was because of your book, The Amazing Health Transformation. The book is here. A few months ago when the book was launched and I had the opportunity to read it. And you know what struck me about the book most importantly was that you're not trying to be a health evangelist.
Right.
So you're not trying to tell people, oh, this is one right way of doing things, as many others are trying to say. What you're instead trying to do is to create a dialogue around health.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this will be an extension of that. So I'm really glad that we have this opportunity. To begin with, let me play devil's advocate.
Sure.
Right? Let me ask you, as a hedonist, why should we care about health and wellness?
Sure.
Why, if I have the resources, can't I have a good life and indulge myself and eat whatever I want and not exercise and not go to the gym?
Sure.
Why can't I have that life? Especially if I am one of those who think that health and wellness is just a fad. It'll go away.
Sure. No, I think it's a very good question. It's funny you asking me, because in fact, that is how I live my life up till I was 40. The journey probably started when I was 14 or 15 when I left home. And I just said, to hell with everything. I'm going to eat and drink and make merry, and exercises for, dumb people with low IQ. I'm somebody with a high IQ who reads books, who reads Aristotle and, Socrates and what have you. That's pretty much exactly what I believed. But what the irony of this whole story is that the human body is something that's both a miracle if you take care of it, but also can completely go wrong if you don't. And I discovered, much to my dismay, at the age of 40, what can happen if you don't take care of it. Slowly, progressively, think of it like rusting. Your body is rusting. The challenge with this process is it takes time. I started this process of rusting probably when I was 15 or 16. It took me 25 years for it to manifest as real problems. And in that entire 25-year period, I was telling myself, I'm fine. Exactly what you said. Like, why should I care? What is this nonsense? I can do anything I want. I'm invincible. No, nothing can go wrong to me. And, in your head, you play these mind games, right? That no, मैं नहीं बीमार पड़ता, मैं दूसरों को बीमार करता हूँ, right? Like these kinds of silly things you say to yourself, till one day the dam breaks. And I think when the dam breaks, actually you're in a chronic crisis where only a hospital can intervene and maybe hopefully correct. But I think what I learned was the whole point was not to get there, right? So like you said, I don't preach. I don't ask you to live a way. I think the only thing I can say is that I learned the hard way that if you don't take care of your body, you can very quickly get to a place where you just completely break down. But the amazing thing is if you take care of your body, living a healthy life is not difficult at all. It doesn't require you to give up. It doesn't require you to stop. It doesn't require you to sort of shut down. It doesn't require you to, sort of be very controlled or very disciplined or anything like that. Actually, being healthy is your natural state. We just forgot how. I at least forgot how. So that's the argument I would make on why you care, because what you're doing is looking after the only asset you have. You have a home, you have a car, you have probably a bank balance, and you have a reputation, you have a brand name, you have a, whatever career. None of it matters, right? If your body's not working. So I said that's why you should take care of your health. And that's I discovered way too late. Thank you for watching. Being connected to each other is easily one of the most powerful emotions a human being can feel. On that note, I have a very small request to make of you. Lots of you watch this channel, but not all of you subscribe to this channel. If you subscribe, you'll get notified of all the new episodes that we're going to be releasing very shortly. We've had some fascinating conversations with some amazing people who have so many powerful lessons to teach. So please do subscribe. If you subscribe to the channel, you will know about all the new episodes we're releasing. So please subscribe. Subscribe now.
I saw a tweet of yours recently where you compared the body to a Ferrari, and you said that the body is just as a miracle in terms of the mechanics of it, in terms of how it functions. So if you have a Ferrari, would you not maintain it properly?
Correct,
so
exactly.
Similarly, your body as well, right?
Yeah. In fact, I would say like a Ferrari is a very, very poor shadow of the human body.
Indeed.
A Ferrari can break down.
Yes.
But if you take care of the human body, it gets almost invincible. We've been having conversations through the day. And, some of my guests have come and at least told me that, you can live to 1,000 years if you so desire. And in a healthy state.
Yeah.
Not in a frail, debilitating state. So that's the miracle of the human body. Like to take care of it. I was just trying to use the Ferrari as an analogy.
Sure.
Because that's something that resonates. But the human body is the work of a miracle, literally.
Absolutely. And your story of transformation is extremely inspiring. I think you lost some 28 kilos in 3 months or something like that. Can you tell us a few more of these stories of transformation that you've come across that show why health and wellness matter so much?
No, sure, absolutely. And I think, what I want to emphasize is not just the fact that I lost the 28 kilos, but the fact that I reversed my bronchial asthma. Right? That was something that all doctors said was not possible to reverse. I reversed my type 2 diabetes. Back then, they said it was not possible to reverse. I was hyperacidic. I reversed that. I would sleep like 2-3 hours a night. I've changed that. I had terrible fatigue. I've changed that. I've gone from taking 7 medicines a day to not taking a single one in the last 9 years. Oh. So that's the miracle. For me, my transformation started actually with my parents. Right. So they were the two first people I cured. My mom was someone with very low immunity, with terrible migraines, high blood pressure, and terrible indigestion. Dad was someone who was type 2 diabetic, hypertensive, and at his age, a little bit more weight than he needed. When I could fix them, I completely changed their lives. Mom lost weight, dad lost weight. Both their blood pressures kind of disappeared. Dad's diabetes went away. Mom's immunity sort of got better. Her digestion got better. For me, that was the inflection point. For me, It was like, wow, this is incredible. I'm not just changing myself. Yes. I'm actually changing someone else's life. And if those two people were your parents, the ability to give back to your parents, that's just transformative. That for me was, just heaven. I'm an entrepreneur. I like to think I make impact, but this was true impact. So that for me was easily my two big stories. That was what led me into this journey. I may not have been here had it not happened. Since then, I've met, I'd say 10,000 people in total. We create miracles with every single one of them. I'm yet to meet someone that we've not really been able to transform. The kinds of cases that we meet where we are not able to, we tell them upfront. Right. So I met a very famous person who had a smell disability. Okay. So she could not smell at all. And we very upfront told her, listen, we don't think we can solve. Short of that, I'll tell you 3-4 stories. So, a very dear friend, her father had very high blood sugar. Okay. So his, what they call a HbA1c was about 12 or 13. His morning fasting was, say, 400. And obviously, in a condition like that, he was taking 5-6 injections in a day. He was almost not willing to actually do anything about it. And thanks to our persuasion, he started. I'd say in about 4 months, his blood sugar levels came back to normal. His HbA1c dropped. And he's been free of all medications ever since. So he's not had to take any injections ever since. When we met, I could literally see tears of joy, right? Imagine not having to take an injection that you've been taking for 20 years, 6 times a day, every single day. I mean, that's just a miracle, literally. For you, it's a miracle. Forget for us. It doesn't matter what happens to us. For you, waking up and not having to take a medicine, it's just truly remarkable. There was someone else who was coughing incessantly because they would get allergic attack that would trigger a bronchial, sort of infection. And then they'd start coughing, something that I actually had myself. Right. And slowly and gradually, we were able to improve the immunity, which is really, bronchial asthma is really a low immunity problem. When the allergen's going in, your body's not able to fight it. And so therefore, then it inflames your body. Right. We were able to boost the immunity. As a function of that, then the asthma got subdued. The coughing naturally stopped. And then imagine again waking up one morning and not coughing. Right? It's just truly a miracle. There's a very dear friend of mine. Son was extremely unwell. He has special needs, and the doctors had kind of given up. They said, "Listen, there's nothing we can do. His muscles are atrophying, and at some point, very quickly, his heart will, atrophy and die. And you have a little bit time left with him, and anything you can do to sort of, make the most of it, please do." It was at that point in time that she reached out. We were very quickly able to identify there was a vitamin D deficiency. So his vitamin D levels were 1.
Oh, God.
He was being treated by top doctors from across the world.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they had not been able to identify the fact that his vitamin D levels were very low.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute we fixed that, he was fine. He's still okay now. Of course, his special needs continue.
Right.
But otherwise, physically, he's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, we had another case where there was a child who had special needs, but had also developed insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and was overweight. Now, the mother had to deal with both the indulgences of the food, the fact that he was eating more than he needed. That was creating all kinds of challenges as far as the body was concerned. So the liver was getting loaded, the kidney was getting loaded, the pancreas were getting loaded. That was creating other kinds of problems. And yet also deal with the special needs. So again, while we don't claim to be able to address special needs, what we were very successfully able to do was to reduce the weight. So he lost, I'd say, about 30 kilos.
Wow.
His diabetes went away, his sugar went away, the sort of derivative challenges because of that went away. There are thousands, literally, there are thousands of such cases where, and for us, every case we deal with is special. Every case we deal with is dear. We bring a lot of empathy to what we do. I'm grateful to the opportunity to serve in some sense. There was no way in hell that 20 years ago, if you told me I'd be doing this,
yes,
I would say you're crazy, right? So I think in some sense I'm blessed. Somebody decided that I should have this gift, the gift of being able to help someone. I think it's an incredible gift to have been given. So I'm just, every day I wake up and say, thank you. I'm so glad I got this chance. The fact that I can impact someone else and bring joy to their life, it cannot be a bigger blessing.
And it's incredible, these stories you tell, because I think there was a survey that came out last year done by the WHO, which showed that 66% of deaths in India are due to NCDs, non-communicable diseases.
Exactly.
And respiratory diseases, things like diabetes all fall under that category.
Yeah.
And as you tell these stories, it's pretty obvious that these are conditions that can be reversible.
Correct.
Maybe not in every case, but in majority of the cases.
Yeah.
Right?
No, in fact, actually, if you look at the World Health Organization, they also say that these are lifestyle diseases.
Right.
Now, what do you mean when you say lifestyle disease? By definition, what you're saying is it's your lifestyle that's giving you the disease, right?
Yes.
So now, of course, if you change your lifestyle, are you saying you can't change the disease? You can, of course. Because, the miracle is that the human body renews all the time.
Right.
Every second you make new cells, you get new stomach lining, you get new, you get new red blood cells, your bones renew, your muscles renew, everything in your body is renewing. If you just take care of it, at least the reasons why you're dying because of non-communicable diseases, lifestyle diseases, they can 100% be reversed.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's move on to some science training.
Sure.
I'm going to give you some terms, and like a professor, you're going to explain that in very simple terms.
Sure.
So let's start with one word, which I think is probably among your favorite words because it does come up a lot in the book, which is homeostasis.
Correct. Exactly.
So tell us about that.
No, so it's a very simple term. It just simply means balance, right? The concept's simple. Your body is physical, because of which obviously it functions under physical limits. Call them battery limits, if you will.
Right.
Conditions under which your body can function, much like any motor. Take a plane that's flying in the sky. Given gravity and speed and flight and all of that, it can fly at, let's say, 600 miles an hour. You can't fly that plane at 200. It'll fall down to earth. You can't fly it at 1500 because it'll break down and fall down to the earth again. So much like that, the human body also has limits under which you can function. As long as you keep them within limits, your body is fine. The minute you go out of your limit, you're actually creating inflammation. So homeostasis is just that term that means that your body has limits. Keep it within your limits. As long as you're within your limits, your body works perfectly well. The minute you take it out of your limit, it starts getting stressed. That stress, if it continues over and over and over again, will lead to chronic disease. So homeostasis just means stay in your balance.
The sweet spot.
Yeah, sweet spot, exactly. Goldilocks, if you will.
Absolutely. Allostasis.
So allostasis is this term that your body is actually flexible. So when I said that there are limits, again, science has shown that there are people who have, let's say, capacities that most normal people would not have. So, for example, they're the Inuit in Alaska,
right,
that are able to eat several times the protein that you and I can eat. They have a much larger liver and they can process that food much better. They can process that protein much better. They can process fat much better, differently than the way you and I sort of process it, which means the human body adapted.
Right.
So allostosis is just this concept that the body can adapt. You don't want to be testing that too quickly. It does take time for it to adapt. The Inuit didn't just get there overnight.
Yeah.
It may have taken 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 generations to get there. But yes, eventually, if you keep on sort of repeating the same thing over and over again, chances are that your body can adapt to cold, to hot, to this, to that. That's actually allostosis.
So if I go and have 10 eggs right away, that's not the best way to
That's
do
not
it.
the best way
to build it up slowly.
Correct, exactly.
Right. Let's go to another term, which is interoception.
Yeah, sure.
Is that a combination of two words?
Yeah, no, it's one word actually.
Okay.
It's one word. When you look at the human body, actually the human body cares about itself. We like to think that the human body cares about the world outside. But largely when you're looking at the world outside, you're looking at danger. Like, is the world outside doing anything to harm me? Is there anything happening out there that can cause any kind of harm to the human body? But otherwise, what the human body cares about is what's happening inside. Is my heartbeat okay? Is my liver working okay? Is my blood pressure okay? Is my brain working okay? Is my digestion working okay? That food that came in, did I absorb it or not? Was I able to extract everything from it? That's this notion of interoception, which means that your body has lots and lots and lots of sensors. Those sensors are constantly sending signals to your brain. Your brain is then responding and saying, do this or do that, or don't do this or don't do that. That is the primary function of the human body, to look at itself, not the world outside. To look at itself and say, okay, am I working well or not? Is everything working well or not? And if that's working fine, then I'm fine. If, heaven forbid, something is happening on the outside, as long as it's not causing danger to me, then how do I care?
So let's say if I'm having a cheesecake and I love it and I've devoured it and I have ordered another one, finished that. And then my body tells me, hey, let's stop there. Let's not have a third one. Is that also interoception?
Yes, absolutely. So that is in some sense interoception. There is a delay. One of the challenges of food, particularly, I think what they call the governor, your brain stepping in saying, listen, you're pushing too hard, kicks in very quickly when you're doing exercise, for example, kicks in very quickly when you're running, for example, kicks in very quickly when you're climbing a mountain, for example, right? Very quickly in the first 10 steps, you'll say, what the hell are you doing? Why are you climbing this mountain, right? So I think the governor kicks in very quickly when you're doing physical activity. There's a reason why the governor is delayed when you're dealing with food, because we forget that for all of humanity, right, we have actually starved.
Right.
This plentiful, world that we live in is a very, very, very recent phenomenon, right? The fact that my 10-year-old son can press a button and have food delivered to him 3 a.m. didn't exist 10 years ago. Right? So the human body is designed to live in a world where there was shortages, not plenty. And so it didn't want you to eat less than you needed. So there's actually a 20-minute delay between when the food goes in and you are actually full to the point at which the brain gets that signal and says you're full. And that's actually what happens when you eat things like tiramisu and so on and so forth.
Right.
You've eaten more than you needed, your body's already full. But because there's a delay, so that signal doesn't go into your brain fast enough. And so you can keep on indulging till, it's almost too late. And you're saying, oh my God, why did I do this? So there's a little bit of delay when it comes to food. Right. Other things, actually, your body kicks in very quickly.
So the way to avoid binge eating is to have that break.
Correct, exactly.
Between two.
Yeah, if you delayed, if you felt like you still needed to eat more, you waited 15 minutes, chances are you'll be full.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Proprioception.
Yeah, sure. So that's then looking at the outside, looking at everything that's happening outside you. Is there danger? Is something happening? Then I'm using whatever I'm seeing on the world outside to sort of create pattern recognition. So I see red from the corner of my eye in my history. Red was a color that signified danger in some way. Green was a color that signified danger in some way. Blue was a color that signified danger in some way. So out of the corner of my eye, I'm seeing something that's red, blue, green, whatever. I'm seeing a certain shape, a certain form, a certain look, a certain appearance, whatever. That's actually the way my body would process that signal, quickly understand that whatever is happening is not good for me. Essentially, your body is looking for danger. It's looking for anything that can cause harm. I want to sort of react to that very quickly. You have what you call the emotional brain. I was shocked to learn that the emotional brain can react as quickly as 18 milliseconds. Wow. And again, something I didn't know, 1 second is actually 1,000 milliseconds. So it's literally taking 18 milliseconds, 1.8% of a second for your brain to register an emotion. An emotion can be triggered by anything happening around you. That's how quick your brain is.
So you mentioned emotional brain. So what's the other part?
So there's a logical brain. The logical brain can take up to a minute even to process. And that's actually one of the reasons why we get stressed. So what happens is something happened that I saw outside my world. My emotional brain quickly reacted to it. Because again, remember, if it took too long, I could die.
Yeah.
Imagine an arrow was coming to hit me.
Right.
And I took like a minute to figure out whether it's an arrow or not, to recognize the fact that it's an arrow, to recognize the fact that the arrow is going to kill me. I would be dead, right? So I need to react very quickly. That's that emotional brain kicking in instantly. In fact, they say even preemptively. I could almost
predict what's going to happen.
I'm almost predicting what might happen, and because I'm predicting, I'm moving out of harm's way. So in fact, even that 18 milliseconds is the aftermath of that prediction.
Sure.
So that's the emotional side of the brain. Then what happens is over time, your logical brain kicks in. It says that, wait, hold on, that's not really an arrow. I don't know why you're worrying so much. There was no problem. Priyam would never shoot an arrow at you. He's got such a lovely, relationship with you.
Yeah.
You have such a warm, friendship. Why on earth would you be shooting arrows at you, right?
Right.
It took me a certain amount of time.
Right.
Okay. Now, what happens actually is you get caught in that process. So you have schemas. Schemas are pattern recognition, tools that you have in your brain.
Okay.
That schema is sort of registered very quickly in like milliseconds, and you were not able to break out of that schema.
Right.
It took too long for your brain to go into its logical mode, too long for you to rationalize it. By that time, that stress had become chronic. And as that stress had become chronic, you were unable to break out. So while your logical brain kicked in and said, no, wait, hold on, what the hell are you saying? This is not possible. But that, that voice inside, like, but what if? But what if? But what if? But what if? Yes, of course, he was friendly till yesterday, but who knows, something happened last night, right? And that changed his opinion. And now he's actually shooting arrows at me. And you see that in real life, right?
True.
You keep worrying about things that are not necessarily real. That's the absence of your logical brain being able to overpower, in some sense, that emotional brain. Then you get caught in that chronic condition, and then that just leads to stress and anxiety.
Sure. The last time I want you to define is hormesis.
Yeah, sure. So that, again, is this term of stress, right? So what happens is, in some sense, human beings hate stress.
Yeah.
But the truth is that stress is a very, very powerful tool of change. Okay. So think about it this way. Let's say you exposed yourself to a very, 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 very tiny amount of stress. Okay. I'll give you the example of flying. Okay. I was somebody who'd almost died in a plane crash. Yeah. And of course, after that, for months and years, it was terrible for me to, even consider the thought of flying. Right. I would actually get 102 degrees Fahrenheit temperature.
Wow.
3, 4, 5 days before a flight. That's how much that panic had sort of become acute in my case. Back then, I didn't know what hormesis meant. But if I did, then here's what I would actually have done. What I would have done is simulated the notion that I'm flying. Okay. Perhaps go and sit in a chair that looked like a flight chair. Right? Perhaps go on and strap myself into a chair with a belt. Perhaps someone narrate to me, hey, we are going to take off and, welcome to flight number such and such on, airline, such and such, and so on and so forth. All of which are triggering very, very, very tiny amounts of stress in my body, almost in some sense preparing me for that eventuality. Right? So if you keep on exposing yourself to tiny amounts of these stresses, you're actually training your body to recognize that there is no problem. So going back to that conversation we were having, my emotional brain immediately reacted to, oh my God, I'm going to fly, right?
Yes.
And then in 30 seconds or 10 seconds or 5 seconds, my brain kicked in and said, no, wait, hold on. You're not even on a flight. This is a simulation.
Correct.
But when you kept on training yourself over and over again, actually you prepared your body to be able to deal with it, such that when you went to deal with it, there was no problem at all. Right. So hormesis is this ability to constantly train your body by exposing itself to things that are stressful. The more you expose yourself in micro doses, preferably with some guidance. Guys, this is not something I want you to go home and say, listen, I heard Ritesh saying, take a knife and stab yourself, because that's the way to sort of learn how to deal with the stress of being stabbed. No, that's not the idea here at all. This is something you want to do under guidance.
Yeah.
But yes, if you can expose yourself to tiny amounts of stress, you get stronger.
And also perhaps another way of looking at this is, what students do for competitive exams by sitting for mock tests.
Yeah, sure.
They try and simulate that environment to show that tension can be controlled.
Exactly. That's exactly what you're trying to do. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more in depth about stress.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of people think and feel, until they actually see the other side of it, that stress is largely psychological or emotional.
Yeah.
But you in your book, as well as in other conversations, have spoken extensively about stress can also be physical.
Correct, exactly.
What I want to ask you is, when exactly does stress start becoming physical?
Yeah, sure. So in fact, instantly, within that 18 milliseconds, the body will quickly transfer this into physicality. By definition, it's necessary because, again, remember, stress was the arrow that you were shooting at me, right? So now imagine that you were shooting an arrow at me, or I thought that you were shooting an arrow at me. I'd need to respond physically, not emotionally. What was the point of me, sort of looking at the philosophy of whether you should be shooting at me, whether it's right for you to shoot at me, whether it's moral for you to shoot at me, and so on and so forth. It doesn't matter, right? Because I'm going to die. So the reaction I need is physical, right? I need to run out of harm's way. And I can only run out of harm's way by being physical. right? So in fact, instantly, the body transfers all stress. It doesn't matter what that stress into the physical being.
Right.
Because it needs to prepare itself for response, which means your breath will change, your heart rate will change, your muscles will change, your body will prepare itself, chemicals will be released, adrenaline will be released in your body to be able to enable you to do whatever you're doing. Now, what happens is if it transferred and then the stress was not something you could reason, and again say, listen, there's no way this can happen, and you got into a chronic state, the physicality of that stress remained.
I see.
Right? So the emotional may or may not remain, but the physicality will remain. You're in a state of hyper preparedness, if you will.
Right.
Your body's just saying, listen, the stress. I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how to deal with it. And I need to keep myself ready. But what if?
Correct.
So that logical brain is not able to take over and sort of de-stress you and say, don't worry, there's no problem. This cannot happen. Or even if it happens, it's okay. And so you're in a state of chronic stress. So what I teach people to do is to decouple.
Okay.
To kind of say that, listen, whenever there is emotional stress, there's emotional stress. You're going through, terrible financial crisis. You're going through a terrible relationship, whatever the case might be. That emotional effect will remain. But what you could change is the physicality of that stress. So, for example, if your breathing is changing, you can slow it down. If your heart rate is, very rapid, you can slow it down. If your digestion's got affected, you can improve your digestion. If your sleep has got disrupted, there are things you can do to improve your sleep. So now what happens is if the body is better, then the body is very selfish. The body says, listen, you may be going through a breakup. Your business may not be doing well, but I'm okay. Right? As far as I'm concerned, how do I care?
Yes.
What do I know about a business? I don't understand what a business means. I don't know what profit loss means. I don't know what a promotion means. I don't know what a designation means. I know my liver's working okay. My heart's working okay. My digestion's working okay. So the minute you decouple, suddenly actually you empowered yourself. Because oftentimes emotional stresses are things that are beyond your control. If you could control them, you would have. It's something happening independent of you in some sense, right? Outside of you, which may or may not be in your control. So, deal with it the way you need to. There are lots of good solutions for that as well. Therapy is one of them. But the physicality of something is 100% in your control. So I want to teach you to be aware of the fact that it's physical and the fact that you can change that physicality. The minute you do that, life changes dramatically.
And also what you're trying to say is that if I'm feeling emotionally low, it doesn't have to be that my body also has to feel low. I can actually create that distinction.
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about panic attacks.
Yeah, sure.
Because one thing that I've been noticing a lot is people in my age group, mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s, are having a lot of panic attacks. Perhaps because now we have the vocabulary to define it as well.
Correct, exactly.
But how do we potentially anticipate a panic attack? Because nobody goes from having a very great life to suddenly having a panic attack, right?
Correct.
It's a spectrum.
Yeah.
So in what point in that journey can you take a seat back and be like, oh, I think this is where it's heading.
Correct.
So what can I do to prevent it?
No, it's such a wonderful question. So I think first we need to understand the physiology of a panic attack. What's actually happening to your body when you're having a panic attack?
Yeah.
Essentially, what is happening is you breathe in oxygen and you breathe out carbon dioxide. The minute you get into a stressful situation, your breath will change. And in this case, what happens to your breath is your breath becomes very rapid. So you start breathing, let's say, from 10 to 12 times a minute to maybe even breathing 30 times a minute. Right? So when you're hyperventilating, unfortunately, one of the things that is happening is you're giving out too much carbon dioxide. So while you're breathing in, it's shallow. You're breathing out rapidly. You're giving out a lot of carbon dioxide. That changes the alkalinity of your blood.
Right.
So your blood goes from a low pH level. So your pH is 7.36 to 7.42. It starts to tend towards the 7.42 and higher. That changes the alkalinity of your blood. And that's actually what's triggering the panic attack.
I see.
A panic attack is your body recognizing that I have too little carbon dioxide. So breathe so that I can get more carbon dioxide, which is why they ask you to breathe into a bag. You're being asked to put back carbon dioxide. You're breathing out the carbon dioxide and that's going back in. So the air quality is changing. There's more carbon dioxide in that air. And that's something you're putting back into your body. So your alkalinity falls and the panic attack disappears. That's the physiology. Now, to put this into practical terms, what do you do? I think the first is be aware of your breath. Be aware of how many times you're breathing per minute. Your goal is ideally to be sub 10. If you can breathe less than 10 times a minute, chances are you're not going to get a panic attack.
Right.
Once you're aware of how often you're breathing and how frequently you're breathing, I'd say train yourself to breathe slowly, very, 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 very slowly. In an ideal world, you should be breathing, I'd say 5-6 times a minute. No more than that. 10 to 12 seconds per breath. Very, very slowly. If you are doing that, regardless of whatever is the stressor in your life, you are not going to have a panic attack. And that's actually the cure maybe for a panic attack.
Wonderful.
It's easily possible. Anyone can do it.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because as human beings who are alive, we are alive because by definition we are breathing.
Breathing, yeah.
And yet we don't exactly know the science or even how to breathe properly.
Literally.
Right. So could you go a little deeper and tell us about how to master this process of slow breathing?
Sure. So, I mean, again, I'm not a master. It's something that I'm trying to explore for myself.
Sure.
I've learned a lot about breathing, but there are, obviously lots of other people who are far better than me at, sort of maybe teaching you breathing. I'd say what I can share is first be aware that your breath is literally prana. If breathing well is easily one of the best things you can do for yourself, for your health. There are 2-3 things that are fundamental. The first is ideally you should be breathing through your nose only, in and out. Okay. I know lots of people mouth breathe, both in and out. It's not good for you at all. The second is you want to be breathing very, 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 very slowly. So like I said, 5-6 times a minute is ideal. If you're at about 10, you're still okay. I think that's a great sort of place to be. Then slowly start training yourself to do different kinds of practices. So I can give you 2 or 3 that I do. I do something called a breathe in and hold. Okay. So I'm breathing in and holding for as long as I can. I started with maybe about 15, 17 seconds. The longest I've done is about 105 seconds. Oh. I could just hold my breath for 105 seconds. Wow. In and hold. Then you breathe out and hold. That again, I could do about 55 seconds. Breathe out and hold. What that's doing to your body is training your body to be deprived of oxygen and carbon dioxide and yet produce cells. So you produce 5 million cells every second. Imagine I held it for 100 seconds. Then all the cells born in that 100 seconds were born in an environment deprived of X, carbon dioxide or oxygen. They just became more resilient.
I see.
So the more you can practice to breathe in and hold and breathe out and hold, you're creating resilience, hormesis.
Yes.
This is in one sense hormesis of the cell. With context to the oxygen and the carbon dioxide. Like that, I keep on trying different kinds of things to breathe. But again, like I said, I'm no master. I'm somebody who's just literally trying to learn. There are far better people out there.
Let's talk another strategy that many people think helps with stress, which is meditation.
Sure.
Now, many of us have tried meditating at least once or twice.
Yeah, sure.
I have tried it myself. But the biggest problem I face is not so much sitting down and finding the right environment or even finding the right app. It's the idea that I have to stop thinking.
Sure.
It's almost like when I'm meditating, even more thoughts come into my brain.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you reach that stage of thoughtlessness?
Sure. I think it's very badly misunderstood. Okay. So I don't think the objective of meditation is to stop thinking. Okay. It's not possible. I know you hear stories of people who have no thought. Like, how would you even record the fact that someone has no thought? Yeah. It's not possible, right? So, like, the only way you'd know I had no thought in my head is if I told you. Yes. And then how do I know that I had no thought, right? Again. So I think it's a little bit of an oxymoron. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So I don't think your goal is to be free of thought. I think your goal actually is to allow those thoughts to occur, allow those thoughts to happen the way they're happening. They say observe. I say don't even observe. Just let it be. What I learned for myself is that when you do that, actually you're releasing. Because otherwise what typically happens with our thoughts is we suppress and or we divert. So every time you get a thought in your head, especially if it's not pleasant, there are 1 or 2 things you're going to do. You're going to suppress it and say, don't think about this. Don't think about it today. We'll worry about it tomorrow. Tomorrow's a new day. Tomorrow will be a better day. Different circumstances allow me to think about that.
Sure.
So what are you doing? You're just suppressing the thought. Or you'll divert that thought, which means go out and drink, go out with friends, watch a movie, read a book, listen to some music. You're diverting your thought.
Yes.
You're saying, I don't want to think about this. Let me think about something else. Okay. In both those cases, actually, you haven't let go of that thought.
Correct.
But if there's a painful thought in your brain, ideally what you want to do is let go. Let that be and just say, let it go. It doesn't matter to me anymore. At least the trauma of that thought I don't want to keep. Meditation, in my opinion, is the only way, essentially, to learn how to forget. What you're doing is learning how to forget the trauma of that thought. And the only way to learn how to forget is to allow that to happen. Not suppress, not divert. Because suppression and diversion occurs from the brain. And you're trying to release things from the brain. The brain's designed not to release. Right? By definition, imagine I started forgetting everything I learned. Every experience I had, I just quickly forgot.
Yes.
Right? That would not be effective at all.
Right.
So here what you're doing is saying, let me sit down, let the thoughts come, let the mind, body, soul, whatever you want to call it, process this thought. And if there is a way to let it go, then let it go.
Right.
That actually is counterintuitive because it's not you who's doing it. And that's actually where people get lost. Because when you say you, who are you? You are the brain, right? And so how can the brain that's designed to remember also be taught how to forget? There is some other being, call it your soul, call it your spirit, call it whatever you want. That's actually making that choice. And so the idea of meditation is just sit down, let the thoughts come. 3 seconds is enough. 7 seconds is enough. This is not an Olympic, competition.
Exactly.
You're not competing with yourself for how long you can meditate. Don't get, swayed by what you see on Instagram of, monks who are meditating for 17 days at a stretch. 17 seconds is a lot, especially for someone who's not trained. So start small, so it's very, very tiny bits. Progressively, sort of increase that if you want to. But the idea is to forget.
Right. Is there an optimal time to meditate? Time of the day, time of, your routine? Maybe is there a no zone to meditate? Like you shouldn't meditate right after you've had a meal or right after you've exercised, anything of that sort?
Yeah, sure. So, of course, they say Brahm Muhurat, the morning hours are the best.
Yes.
There's a certain vibration in the earth. There's a certain amount of sun rays that are coming in. I was with someone else this morning and he was talking about how the birds are signaling, the trees are signaling, the oxygen and carbon dioxide balance in the earth is changing and so on and so forth. I don't argue against that. I think if you can meditate in the morning, there's no reason not to. Definitely don't meditate immediately after you've eaten because the body is sending all its blood into your digestive tract in order to be able to ingest, digest, and then absorb all that food. So you certainly don't want to be sitting in meditation right after you've eaten. But otherwise, I would say, meditate whenever you want. No? Morning, noon, afternoon, evening, how does it matter? Meditate anytime you want. Anyway, you're going to meditate for like a minute maybe. And you progressively only get better and better. You'll find for yourself what's the right time.
I want to ask you about something I read called the vagus nerve.
Sure.
What exactly is that?
Sure. So your body essentially has what they call the autonomous nervous system, which in itself is composed of different kinds of subsystems. Two of the important ones are the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic is your activation. Okay. Right? If suddenly you saw danger, you wanted to run out of harm's way, your body would activate itself and then say run. Okay, once the danger is over, your logical brains kicked in and said, okay, danger is over, whatever was there is gone, there's no more fear of anything. You want to be able to bring your body down and calm, right? That is the parasympathetic. So the vagus nerve is a very integral part of the parasympathetic system. It brings calm back into your body. It says everything's fine, calm down, sit down, relax, the danger's over, you're okay, right? So you really want to understand how the vagus nerve works, your parasympathetic system works. Because in an ideal world, even if you're confronted with danger, imagine you could do it in a greater parasympathetic mode.
Right.
Activate your body, but do it in a more parasympathetic mode. So you want to be that Olympic athlete, if you will, competing in the Olympics, but competing in a very calm state. That's, I would say, in a sense, your ideal goal. So understanding how the vagus nerve works, the parasympathetic system in your body works, being able to tap into that in some sense, bring your body into a calm state, and then live life. That's, I think, ideal.
Fantastic. Let's shift gears and move to exercise.
Sure.
But before I ask you a substantial question, let me ask you this. What percentage of Indians do you think actively go to the gym?
Yeah, I'd say zero, maybe 0 point something.
Yeah,
very, very low.
0.2%.
Very, very
found
low.
by the World of Statistics.
Yeah, very, very low.
Shocking, but perhaps not surprising.
Yeah.
When it comes to exercise, I was reading about this, that when exactly did the concept of exercise come into being as something that is of health benefits? There was this gentleman called Jeremy Morris in the UK.
Okay.
And he found out that if you're moving around, any form of movement is actually exercise.
Sure.
And the way he studied it is in the 1950s, he looked at the difference in health between the London conductors and the London bus drivers. Now, because bus drivers sit for most of their job, their health was found to be far inferior to the conductors who move around.
Yeah, sure.
So, adding on to that, exercise is not just gymming, right?
Sure.
It's any form of movement. So
Correct.
if you can just elaborate on that.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. In fact, again, I had a fascinating conversation with someone this morning who told me that even, gyms are silly, and actually all you should be doing is yoga. So the thing is, and I don't disagree, I think he's probably right. Yoga is a very deep form of exercise if you know how to do what you're doing. But having said that, yes, I think the right answer here is movement first, to just be very, very active. I've read another very interesting statistic that 100 years ago, a 6-year-old child was walking anywhere between 6 and 10 miles every day.
6 and 10 miles?
Every single day.
Wow.
My child doesn't walk 600 meters. Right? Because I don't send him down to the building gate because I'm afraid someone will abduct him and take him away. Right? So a child was walking in not the environment that we're living in fairly hostile environments, in a jungle perhaps, but walking 6 to 10 miles every single day. The human body is designed to move. Yes. The human body is not designed to sit. So any kind of movement, it doesn't matter what it is. If you can add things like strength training, cardiovascular, running, swimming, cycling, yoga, if you will, whatever it is, the more you do, the better it is.
When it comes to gymming, as you said, the more you do, the better it is. But you also have to start slowly, right?
Sure.
Especially with respect to gymming, especially with respect to weight training. So what is an optimal starting time if I'm just going to the gym for the first time tomorrow? How long should I spend there?
I'd say 10 minutes. Even 10 minutes is a lot, because I think, especially if you're someone who's never exercised, I think the ideal way is to start very, very slowly.
Okay.
Because it's very easy to exert your body to exhaustion. And then actually the psychology kicks in and you're
Right.
like, I can't, this is not really for me. Because you've overdone what you were trying to do on day one. It's exactly what happened to me. I started, let's say, exercising again maybe 8 years ago. And the first day when I went to the gym, because the trainer wanted to show me that he could teach me how to exercise, he told me to do 100 squats.
100
I couldn't do
squats.
2. At 2, my legs were burning. The lactic acid was kicking in. I was about to die. But my ego prevented me from telling him. I finally gave up maybe at 12, by which time I was dead. I hated the experience. I was like, what is this nonsense? Why on earth am I having to exercise? And had I not walked on this journey of health, I perhaps may not have gone back. So I think the easiest way to do is exercise is start very slowly. Start with something that's easy for you to do, maybe even walking. Walk for 10 minutes, it's fine. Progressively increase it to 11, then 12, then 13, then 14. Then walk for half an hour, then maybe run for a minute or climb stairs for a minute. Progressively sort of increase what you're doing.
Sure.
Your body will only respond to what you do if you do this systemically, slowly and gradually. If you overexert yourself, your psychology will kick in and you'll stop. Right. So I'd say just do this very, very slowly. There's no hurry. You've not exercised for 25 years. What's the hurry to sort of magically sort of change your life in a month?
Sure enough. For a long time, I mean, now it's going away, but even then, I think in some quarters, this narrative prevails that exercise, especially gymming, is mostly for men, that women don't do it. In fact, I was reading that there was a point in time when people used to believe that it's harmful for women because it might damage the reproductive organs.
Correct.
And then there's this whole patriarchal notion that, women shouldn't sweat, they should glow, and you shouldn't exercise.
Yeah.
But is there any gender aspect to exercise
at
all?
In fact, on the contrary, I would say a woman should exercise more than a man should.
Why is that?
So there's a very simple reason. A woman has hormones, and those hormones protect her from cardiovascular diseases up till menopause. After which those hormones start to dissipate, and then the bones get fragile. Obviously, the cardiovascular protection has gone away. And if you have not exercised for the 30 years prior, actually your fragility has gone up. Right? So I would argue that a woman needs even more exercise than a man does. So there's clearly no gender bias here. But I think you have to go back and ask yourself, why are you exercising? Right? If you're exercising for aesthetics, no problem at all. But I would argue you're exercising to be agile, to be capable of doing basic things, right? Which means sitting, standing, climbing, walking, carrying. You're 70 years old, you have a grandchild in the home. Would you not want to carry him or her in your arms? Now imagine you can't, because your muscles don't have the capacity to lift like that 5 kg child and carry him or her in your arms, right? What's that got to do with being a woman? It's got nothing to do with being a woman. So woman or man, you want to do basic things, no? We're not talking about marathons. We're not talking about climbing Kilimanjaro. We're talking about doing basic things that any person would like to do. And that's, gender agnostic.
Exactly. The National Family Health Survey for 2019 to 2021 showed that roughly 1 in 4 Indians is obese.
Yeah.
And a lot of people go into exercise because they want to lose weight. Yeah. But you once told me that exercise is more about maintenance of cells.
Correct, exactly.
So if you can just elaborate on that.
Yeah, so it's a very, very, very misunderstood term. You can't lose weight by exercise. In fact, by definition, if you exercise well, you would add muscle to your body. If you added muscle to your body, you've added weight to your body. It might be very tiny amounts of weight, but by definition, you added weight. One of the other arguments that's made very frequently is, but wait, hold on, I burnt calories. Yeah. I exercised and so I burnt calories. I think in theory it's correct. Of course, if you ran a marathon, you're going to burn, let's say, 1,000 calories. But in reality, what happens is you eat before, during, and after the marathon. And I promise you're going to eat more than 1,000 calories. So actually, the only way to lose weight is to be in deficit. If I ran the marathon and burned 1,000, but I ate 1,500, I was in surplus, not in deficit. And that's usually happens what happens when you exercise. You end up licensing almost in some sense the ability to eat. So you burnt a little bit, you ate a lot, and actually you're in surplus. Your watch, by the way, lies to you. When your watch tells you, your treadmill tells you 500, 600, 800, 1,000 calories burnt, oftentimes they're off by a factor of 5. Factor of 5.
Wow.
I don't mean 50%.
Wow.
I mean, they could be giving you 5x the calories burned as opposed to the reality.
There are those who do exercise and become obsessed with it. Yeah. And in an age of Instagram where, the body is so much out there, there's always this obsession for perfectionism.
Sure.
But perfectionism or perfection in general is a never-ending journey. You never really become perfect in terms of your body, right?
Yeah.
What would you like to say to those people who think that if you're exercising regularly, then you have to attain a certain kind of body? Is there a certain kind of body, or does everybody have the right body types?
No, sure. So I think we're talking about aesthetics. There is this notion of six-pack ab, bulging biceps, and so on and so forth. I mean, anybody who wants to achieve that, more power to them. I don't judge, right? So whatever makes you happy, please go out and do it. I do know of people who try to get there by maybe, for example, taking steroids. Right. I think that's harmful. Yeah. I think they do that by overindulging in protein. I think that's harmful because it can create uric acid and worse. So if health is what you're looking at, I would say look at other metrics. So look at, for example, your blood profile. Look at your body fat percentage. Look at your sleep quality. Look at your energy levels. I think those are far better metrics to track than whether you have a six-pack ab or an eight-pack ab, or you have 14-inch bicep or a 24-inch bicep. I don't judge. So if that's something that makes you happy, by all means go out and do it. If someone's paying you for it, even more reason for you to do it. But otherwise, I'd say track your blood profile, track your physical parameters, track your sleep. I mean, frankly, track how happy you are.
Exactly. Talking about happiness and the idea of exercise and well-being, I remember your dad coming on the show and talking about in his episode that you've got to learn to be happy.
Correct. Yeah.
And in many ways, one of the reasons why therapy is sort of in vogue again, and many people go for it, is because they feel they've forgotten how to create that learning for happiness.
Yeah.
If you could briefly touch upon therapy as a form of mental exercise, because we've spoken about physical exercise.
Sure.
How important is that therapy? And particularly, how important is it for men?
Yeah.
Because men still, especially in Indian society, have that aversion for therapy. In fact, I would argue a lot of women go to therapy because men don't.
Yeah, sure.
So tell us about that and the need for men in particular to break that toxic relationship.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. To be honest, this is something that has taken time for me as well. I think we've all grown up with the stigma of, only crazy people go to counselors, and, something has to be really wrong with you to go to counselors. And I think India also had a richer social fabric. So, we always grew up with like 30 people in the home, one or two or three of which could then, become your support system very quickly. I think that's obviously changed. So I think we need to recognize the fact that there is the shift, recognize the fact that many of us need help. I would say if I meet 100 people, 90 of them are stressed. So this is not man or woman. Everyone's stressed. Yeah. I think that stigma changed for me when I began to realize that there's such acute stress. And then I just started looking at all kinds of different tools. So I've obviously looked at the devices, I've looked at meditation, I've looked at breathing. And then finally I discovered that, even counseling, just having a conversation with someone, gives you what I'd loosely call perspective. So I actually did one myself. I just wanted to learn. I wanted to understand what happens. And I can very transparently share the challenge or the thought I threw out to the person I was, sort of working with, is I find it difficult to say no. Okay. Right? And then what can I do? And I think the insight she gave me was so fascinating. She said, look, what happens is whenever you get put into a situation where you can't say no, you're unable to find the language to use to say no. Right. It's not like you can't say no. Yeah. You just don't know what language to use. And that aversion is because you don't know how that language would be understood or misunderstood, perceived or not perceived. And in that moment of fear, you choose to stay silent. Right. And then therefore, you're not able to say no. For me, that was very, 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 very insightful. And so then I said, okay, great. If that's true, then what's the answer? She says, very simple. You prepare a list of 5, things that you can say, words that you could use, sentences that you could apply that could pretty much cover 80-90% of the situations you find yourself in. And then just keep practicing that statement over and over again. So the next time you find yourself in a position where you have to say no, the language just springs naturally to you. Right? And that's the role of a counselor. She helped me just understand, get insight, understand that it wasn't such a big mountain to climb. All I needed to do was find that language. Once I found the language, my ability to say is now significantly improved. That's the power of counseling at a very, very basic, simple, sort of, at the end, how does it matter, right? Even if I didn't say no to someone for something, my life's not going to change because of it. But then very quickly that empowers you. And then when you find yourself in a crisis situation, he or she could then help you find ways to help. So I think that's really the power of counseling. I would strongly advocate it today. 10 years ago, perhaps I would be the same person who'd said like, listen, no, this is silly. And I don't know why you're talking about counseling. I think it's really useful.
You mentioned language. Let's talk a little bit more about language, and especially positive language, reinforcing language, affirmative language in the context of health. So to give you an example, today, if like I'm a huge dark chocolate fan, my best friend converted me from milk to dark chocolate. Now all I eat is dark chocolate.
Sure.
But even that too, in excess is not good. But if I tell myself that I won't eat dark chocolate for a month, as compared to saying, oh, I'll have dark chocolate next in middle of September. Those are two different versions, two different realities constructed by language. How important is positive language when it comes to making a difference in your life?
Sure. No, so again, my journey's been very interesting. I used to think all of this like cuckoo stuff. Positive affirmations, keep talking positive, think positive, say positive, be positive, life will be fine, right? And I thought it was this cookie stuff, right? Like, so this is soft stuff that, weak people are telling themselves. Then one day the insight hit me through my reading. The insight was that the key for your body to interpret the world is language. Like, how does your body understand the world? How does your body understand it's a chair? How does your body understand it's a table? How does your body understand it's a flight? How does your body understand it's a happy face? How does your body understand it's a sad face? The only way to interpret what you're seeing in the world around you is to convert that into language. And language is what your brain understands. Okay. So if language is the only key that your brain is able to use to decipher or interpret the world, then obviously it really matters what language you're using. So if I looked at 100 happy faces and I kept telling myself sad, 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 that's all my brain would believe. If I kept looking at really good things happening in my world and I kept telling myself terrible, 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 then my brain doesn't know any different. It says, look, obviously it must be terrible. So I think once I understood that language is the key to interpret your world, then I started changing my language. I started saying, no, this is not just, hocus pocus. This is not like some loose, sort of feel good stuff. This is actually scientific. And as a logical person, I need that science. And that was when that key changed for me. I realized that no, what I tell myself is what my brain believes. If I tell myself, positive things, chances at least my brain will believe it. And that shifts me into a place of maybe being able to do, as opposed to saying, let's just give up. Because if I'm going to die anyway, then, why am I doing all of this anyway? Exactly. I think that's that shift that happened.
To paraphrase Descartes, I speak, therefore I am.
Correct, exactly, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I want to then sort of segue into the idea of conversations and the importance of conversations and connectedness for health. But before that, let me ask you a question. Have you seen the show called Emily in Paris?
I haven't actually.
The reason I ask you this is because it's become the prototypical example for something called ambient television. The idea being that the show goes on and you keep doing your own thing. So you play it on Netflix, you're on Instagram, you're probably taking an order, you're writing, you're thinking, you're eating. All of this is going on. My theory is that we are increasingly having ambient conversations. We're speaking to people on WhatsApp, on Twitter, Instagram. We are still doing something else. Even on call or video call, we're probably doing the laundry. So we're not focusing on one conversation at one single time. This is extremely important and underrated part of our health, would you say? The fact that we don't give our undivided attention to conversations?
Yeah, sure. No, so I'm just trying to process what you're asking. Also because I don't do any of the things you're telling me.
Wow.
So first of all, I don't watch television. I just stopped completely. I stopped reading the news completely. I just don't read the news anymore. I used to read 14 newspapers in a day. Now I read my news from the people I want to read my news from. So I know you write a lovely article. I've got that in a particular feed coming in. I read it, right? Because I want to read the things you're writing. But I may not want to read the other stuff of so many people died and, so many floods happened and so on and so forth. As long as it's not affecting me, it's not material to me. So I've cut my world a lot. I don't multitask. I used to pride myself on the fact that I multitask maybe 20 years ago, that I could read a newspaper, talk on the phone, and do something on my laptop at the same time. Right? And I just pride myself on almost in some sense being nonsensical. Today, I'm very focused. I'm very present. If I'm talking to you, I'm talking to you. If I'm doing something else, I'm doing something else. If I'm playing with my child, I'm playing with my child. As far as possible, I try not to do something else. So I actually don't do any of the things that you described. Only because I realized that that's both very stressful. It stresses my mind and my body no end. And it's very unproductive. Like you almost end up getting nothing done. But the minute I started being in a focused state, I started finding myself in a more happy state. I found myself being more productive. I just found myself opening up large swaths of time. Because when I was trying to do 100 things at the same time, I was unable to do any. And so everything would get left undone. Then come 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the evening, I'm like, oh my God, I have these 100 things left. But because I'm being focused, I get most of it done in the morning and then I have time. So actually you become more productive. by being more focused. So I don't do any of the things you're saying.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I wish more people did that.
Yeah.
But going on about connectedness, Robin Durnber once made this famous, I think he had this survey or some sort of a mechanism during which he proved that most of us have a social circle limit of 120 people.
Right.
We don't go beyond that.
Sure.
But 120 people is also a lot.
Yeah.
When it comes to social interactions, would you say that now, more than ever before, it's important to prioritize depth over breadth?
Yeah, sure. No, so I think the idea goes back to the fact that we are all social animals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the science is also showing that when you have a purpose beyond yourself, you don't live only for yourself.
Yeah.
Beyond yourself could be your kids, it could be your wife, it could be your family, it could be your parents, it could be your friends, it could be your society, it could be a company, it can be, the world, right? Depending on, how large your canvas you want to draw. Mm-hmm. Whether it's 120 people or 120 million people, prime ministers of countries, work for the entire country, if you will. So that's a canvas you have to draw. But I think the idea is that there is a larger purpose in your life,
mm-hmm.
and the larger purpose has to go beyond you.
Yeah.
The minute you've gone beyond yourself, you need relationships, you need connections,
mm-hmm.
you need, depth.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, choose for yourself. I've chosen to narrow my world.
Okay.
I have few, but very, very deep connections.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I live my life. But again, I don't judge.
Mm-hmm.
You can, like a prime minister of a country can't say I can be narrow.
Of course.
Right? For him, the entire country is his world.
Yes.
He has to look after every person who needs him. So yeah, it's a choice you're making.
So each to their own.
Each to their own, I would say.
Right. Going forward from the aspect of connectedness to self-connectedness, if I may put it that way.
Sure.
Nowadays, there are so many devices that monitor and, continuously track everything that we are doing.
Yeah.
How much of that is good? How much of that is obsessive and not necessary? And what rather do you do yourself? How many of these tracking devices do you use? What is the most important thing you track about yourself?
Sure. No, again, it's a very good question. Why I'm smiling is because I'm obsessed with tracking. I track, I'd say, about 80 metrics every single day.
80?
80.
Wow.
I think perhaps the most valuable one that I've found so far is something called HRV, heart rate variability. It gives me a sense of my sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, the thing we were talking about earlier. It gives me a sense of where I am.
Yes.
Where I'm more leaning towards my parasympathetic or my sympathetic. So HRV is something I track obsessively now. Weight's been something I've been tracking for 9 years now. So I'm actually quite obsessed with that. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of tracking. I'm one of those people who believes that if you track and measure, you can create change.
Yeah.
So I don't get intimidated by my number.
Mm-hmm.
I just say, okay, that's where I'm at, and I'm going to change it. So I'll give you an example. I started doing something called hand grip measurement. Mm-hmm. So you take a device and measure how strong your hand grip is. Mm-hmm. I was about 30 pounds when I first did it. I saw the metric that says, for a person of my age and gender, I should have been like 70 or 80 pounds. So I was like 1/3. And despite the fact that I have a history in health and I'm like, talking to other people about health, I was way off my number. But instead of getting intimidated, I use that as a benchmark to say, okay, no problem. Here's where I'm at. Quickly learn what you need to do to change. And, today I'm at about 85. So I'm obviously over the benchmark. And my goal is to just keep doing more. If I get to 100, great. If I don't, that's also fine. So I like measurement. I like tracking. I use that as a stimulus to change my life for the better. Mm-hmm. But there are people who get intimidated. And so you have to make your own choice. Thank you for watching. Being connected to each other is easily one of the most powerful emotions a human being can feel. On that note, I have a very small request to make of you. Lots of you watch this channel, but not all of you subscribe to this channel. If you subscribe, you'll get notified of all the new episodes that we're going to be releasing very shortly. We've had some fascinating conversations with some amazing people who have so many powerful lessons to teach. So please do subscribe. If you subscribe to the channel, you will know about all the new episodes we're releasing. So please subscribe now.
Talking about tracking, obviously a lot of this comes directly from technology and innovations that happen. And as we go along, we are seeing this concept of the extended self, where all these devices are essentially becoming an extension of my own body. So at a very basic level, this pair of spectacles that I'm wearing is essentially extending my body functionality.
Correct.
But tomorrow I have one device, then day after I have another. And gradually, maybe, the way technology is going, maybe even in 10, 15 years' time, everything will be monitored and controlled by devices.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing, or is it too early to judge that firstly? And if it's not, then is it a good or bad thing?
No, sure. So I think there are two arguments here. One argument is to completely break free and go back to your natural self. I'm someone who believes in that. Unfortunately or fortunately, I think the direction we are going in is connectedness.
Yeah.
So, not only will your glasses be able to make you see, they will be able to measure, all kinds of things. So we were chatting with someone else who said, you can start reading brain waves from your glasses. So, that's probably coming in the near future. Your clothes can start measuring, the sweat. The sweat will tell you, let's say, toxicity. It'll tell you body temperature, etc., etc., etc. I think the direction we're going in is connectedness. Use it as a tool to improve your life. I think you're fine. If you get, sucked into that, sort of quicksand of like, okay, that's now just completely running my life, then I think that's a bad thing. I know lots of people I chat with who say, listen, I just want to run away from all of it and just live a natural life. Again, make a choice. I'm someone who's big on connectedness.
Sure.
I use devices extensively, but again, I don't judge.
Fair enough. One thing that devices do, and have already been doing, is that they affect our sleep largely. And I want you to quickly touch upon sleep. We can go on talking about it till we actually fall asleep ourselves. But one thing I have realized is that a lot of people are going through a sleep crisis because, again, the idea of not sleeping enough is valorized. It's sort of glorified. What do you have to say about that? And also, if you can just touch upon the two different kinds of sleep, the one that is for rest and the one that is for recovery, and how much of that depends on the time of day in which you're sleeping.
Sure. No, absolutely. So first of all, sleep is extremely important for you. The ideal sleep cycle is 8 hours. Unfortunately, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. That's when most of humanity has slept for thousands of years.
That's when I'm at my most active.
Exactly. But science clearly says that that's the ideal sort of sleep cycle. There was no electricity 100 years ago. You slept, and that's what you did. So that's the ideal sleep cycle. Rest and repair both occur at night. It is useful to also catch a nap in the afternoon. What we do it in Bengal, have done it for a very long time. It's not a bad thing at all.
Okay.
So ideally, you want to sleep for about 10 minutes or you want to sleep for 90 minutes in the afternoon.
Right.
Either short, a power nap, or something that's a full cycle, typically which is about 75 to 90 minutes. It's what we were doing in Bengal till very recently, till suddenly it became unfashionable. And you became that lazy person who's going off to sleep in the afternoon, and my store is not open or my business is not open or whatever, right? Sethi is going to sleep, right? Kind of a thing. So I think that's silly. I think sleep is very important. Sleep in the afternoon for a little bit if you can, but definitely sleep 7-8 hours at night. The two are not the same. This is sort of just giving you a lift.
Right.
That's actually giving you rest and recovery. So I think that's how you break it down.
Sure.
As far as devices are concerned, again, they're mixed sort of views. Some people say I'll get, sick because I'm measuring my sleep. Every morning I wake up, the first thing I do is say, oh, I slept only 5 hours and 6 hours and so on and so forth. That causes stress. Then I have a terrible day and then I don't sleep well again at night. So it depends on your aptitude. If you're okay using data as a stimulus to do better, then, devices are great for you. If that frightens the hell out of you, just throw away the device.
One thing that Kushagra mentioned when he was on your inaugural episode is that he said he has an alarm to allow himself to go to sleep. And most of us have different sleep timings, but some of us, and it's again becoming a bit of a fad, decide to break our sleep into different slots all across the day. So is that healthy? Does that give you the same amount of rest and recovery as what a traditional sleeping pattern would?
Sure. So again, just to be clear, I'm not an expert on sleep. I can only relate what I've learned and I've read. There is this theory that human beings slept in a biphasic manner. So the idea was you slept at about 7, you woke up at 11, you work for 2 hours, and then you slept again. That's kind of like one of the concepts that's been doing the rounds. At least the little bit of science that I've read doesn't stack up. You need sleep in an 8-hour cycle continuously. Ideally 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. That's what I've read again. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you believe. You've trained yourself to going to sleep at 2 a.m., waking up at 8 a.m. or whatever it is. That's a training that you've done. There was actually an experiment where they took 20 people into a cave, shut out all stimulus, all light, everything. All 20 people started sleeping at 8 p.m. So this notion that, no, I have different circadian rhythms and so on and so forth, at least the science that I've read doesn't seem to suggest so.
Interesting. I'm going to move to the final aspect of today's conversation. I mean, we can go on and on, but the one thing I want to touch upon is something that's slowly entering the field of conversation, largely due to the work of the Israeli historian Yuval Noah Harari. And this concept he talks about called biological immortality. The idea being that as resources improve, as health awareness increases, as devices get better, slowly, humanity, and at least a chunk of humanity which can afford those privileges, we'll reach a position where we no longer will die of natural causes. So unless somebody murders us, or maybe one of the arrows I hit actually ends up hitting you.
Sure.
One of those things, you will not die. How do you feel about that as somebody who, of course, wants to make a difference in making people live better and live longer? How do you feel about the idea of biological immortality, which doesn't mean immortality technically, but maybe everybody living for 120 years, 130 years?
Sure. So I think the answer is two-part. There's a philosophical answer and then there's a physical answer, if you will.
Sure.
The philosophical answer is you have to ask yourself, why are you here? Like, what is your purpose? Right? And let's say if my purpose was to escape karma, escape, my past lives, and sort of in some sense move on, then whether I got done in 10 years, 20 years, or 100, right? It doesn't really matter. The fact was that I got done.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's the philosophical argument. I don't need more time to correct, whatever I've done in my past. 10 years is enough. And if I can do it in 10 years and move on, and if you believe in that, then that's a great way to sort of move on. Then whether you live 10 or 20 or 100 didn't really matter. As far as the physicality is concerned, immortality, I think, is an exaggeration.
Yeah.
I don't think even science is suggesting you can be immortal. You can extend life. So that's already happened. We are living long. The average life expectancy now is 72, if I remember correctly. Also because, less children are dying. So the average age has gone up. So therefore that, the number shifted. I don't think that's suggesting immortality. It's just suggesting that you're likely to live longer. If you read even the statistics carefully, even the fact that life has got extended is a little bit nebulous.
Right.
Because the fact that you're living till 72 is simply because less children are dying.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because we are living much longer. So yes, there are lots of people out there who are injecting them with all kinds of things and, experiment with all kinds of medicines. I think the jury's out there.
Right.
I think the jury's out there. I think the idea is to live quality life.
Sure.
If you cannot die of things that you can avoid, then that's great for you. If that means you got 10 more years of quality life, then, even better for you. But are we immortal? I don't know. I'd say not.
And perhaps it's good if it stays that way because we all know the story of Ashwatthama.
Correct, exactly.
And what happened, the curse of immortality rather than the gift.
Yeah.
Right. So like life, this conversation also has to end. But thank you so much, Ritesh, for having me,
this
for doing this role reversal.
Thank you. Of course. Thank you.
I had a lovely time.
Of course. Likewise. Really enjoyed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.